Hi, everybody. It's Tim back with you today on our walk through the Bible, one day at a time. Um, I should say when we get started, there's a dog across the street that may want to get into this video. Let's try to ignore him as much as possible. But our reading for today was in Deuteronomy chapter 24, 25, 26, and 27. And it covers a lot of issues, but I feel like the Lord would have me deal with maybe the most difficult, controversial issue in these chapters, and that is the issue of divorce. It's a problem in our culture today. It's a problem in our churches today. And I should point out, to start with, by the way, that for those who have been divorced and remarried, God's will is for them to be the best husband or wife they can be to their current spouse. Okay, you can't turn back the clock and try to redo what you've already done. But uh, in general, Deuteronomy 24 is important. There are very few places where the Old Testament deals with that issue. That's why I think I need to deal with it today. We've got this, and then in the book of Ezra, we have, during Ezra's time, men in Jerusalem had married pagan wives, and a decree was made that they should divorce their pagan wives. And then we have God's answer to that, by the way, in Malachi. Malachi was God's prophet who was alive at the same time, and God said through him, he was not answering their prayers as a result because he hates divorce. And the reason for that is he wants a godly seed. He wants children to grow up to know him. But Deuteronomy 24 says, when a man has taken a wife and married her, it come to pass that she find no favor in his eyes because he hath found some uncleanness in her. Then let him write her a bill of divorcement, give it into her hand, send her out of her house. And then it goes on to say that if she leaves, marries someone else, that husband divorces her, he cannot take her back again. And I think that was a requirement maybe to protect women. In a way, you don't pass women back and forth like they were property. And the reason for that is given in verse 4, because she's been defiled at that point. And how was she defiled? Well, she was defiled because she married someone else after being divorced. Now, this was explained by Jesus, and we have to go there in understanding this passage. And I want you to be clear about one thing. When Jesus goes back to the Old Testament and then adds more to it, he's not changing anything. As the second person of the Trinity, he was there in full agreement with what God has given us in Deuteronomy 24. And he doesn't change that, but he does give us a fuller explanation of what God was saying here in chapter 24. He does that in Matthew chapter 19, where the Pharisees appeared to Jesus, testing him, and they were concerned about this uncleanness that you find here. If a man finds some uncleanness, then he writes this bill of divorcement. So what's uncleanness? And there was one rabbi that said, well, uncleanness was adultery. That's the only grounds for divorce. Another rabbi was saying, no, uncleanness can be anything. Someone even expanded that so that he said, well, if a husband sees another woman who's more beautiful than his wife, then he's found some uncleanness in his wife. That's grounds for divorce. That was their question. Okay, which is it? And of course, Jesus was really saying it's the wrong question, because he takes them back to Genesis, not Deuteronomy 24. He says, have you not read that he which made them at the beginning made them male and female, and said, for this cause shall a man leave his father and mother and cleave to his wife, and they twain shall be one flesh. And wherefore they are no more twain, but one flesh, and wherefore God hath joined them together, and let not man put asunder. This is Matthew chapter 19, 4 and 5 and 6. But that was the point Jesus was making. Let's not talk about uncleanness. Let's just stay together because God has put you together. And yes, that piece of paper may be legal. The state where you live in may give you a paper that says, okay, you're just as if you were never married, but not as far as God is concerned. It's a covenant, and God is a party to that covenant. And so their question was, okay, then why did Moses command to give a writing of divorcement? This shows their understanding of Deuteronomy 24. There's no command there to put it in writing. they Moses assumes that this has already happened in Deuteronomy 24. The divorce has already taken place. The wife has already married someone else. And his command was just that, yeah, if she's divorced by her second husband, she can't go back to the first one. Okay, that's already been dealt with. And he says it's because of the hardness of your hearts that this requirement was given in Moses, that you can't take back your wife a second time. He knew that we're sinful people, we have hard hearts. But let me say, having a hard heart is never okay as far as God is concerned in our relationship to Him. That should never be acceptable for anyone. And then he goes on to explain, whosoever shall put away his wife except it be for fornication and shall marry another committeth adultery. I don't know how many times I've heard someone say, well, therefore, adultery is grounds for divorce. But that's not what Jesus said. He didn't use the word adultery. He used the word fornication, which refers to sexual immorality between two people who are not married. And then she remarries, and she committed adultery after being divorced. But he's referring to a situation that existed in the first century and in other places throughout the century. Other countries have had the same laws, but at that time, a couple who was engaged before they were married even had to come to a legal agreement that was binding, and it took a divorce to break an engagement. One example was Joseph, when Mary was expecting Jesus. The conclusion he came to at first was that she was guilty of fornication, but he had to go through a divorce to end that engagement, and then he'd be free to marry someone else. That's what Jesus was referring to here in this place. But the important thing is, and why it's so important to God, and why God says He hates divorce, is this: a marriage is intended to be a picture, an illustration of the relationship between Christ and His church. And it's a relationship that's to be a permanent love relationship that goes on for eternity. And our marriages should reflect that in the way we treat each other, and in the way we just work things out and are determined to be there until death do us part. Well, give that some thought today, will you? And if you want to yell at me, you can put it in the comments section. Or you have a question, I'd be glad to answer it. And dig into the Word tomorrow, just one chapter tomorrow. It's in Deuteronomy chapter 28. Read that and think about it. I'll be back with you then, and we can deal with that at that time. So have a great day, everybody. See you soon.